Hey folks, good to see you all today. I'm going to welcome you to this morning's rather abrupt ending of that intro music as we figure out how to transition between scenes. My name is Joshua. I'm the the Pacific Northwest outreach person for Batdorf Bronson Coffee Roasters. And what we're doing these days is we're reaching out to you here on these platforms to say hello to our customers, to our friends. Maybe you're new to our coffee roasting company, which is awesome. Welcome. We'd love for you to join us. We've been doing this for 35 years. We've been sourcing coffee, roasting it, and talking about it. So this is what we're doing here today. We're focusing more and more on kind of tasting our catalog. So maybe you've seen myself or Brendan do a little bit deeper dives into some of our coffees. So that's what today is about. In fact, this week we've been doing that. On Tuesday we talked about another Asia Pacific coffee that we have right now, which is a Papua New Guinean coffee. You can check that out in the history. If you go down into that, you can hear a little more about that coffee. Yesterday, we talked about two different coffees. One that we're bringing on board today, actually, which is a Bolivian coffee. And then Brendan in the afternoon talked about an African coffee. So we're all around the globe right now. We're going to return back today to Asia Pacific, and we're going to talk about a coffee which has become one of my favorites in our catalog, which we have more often than not. You'll see that we have this Sumatra in our lineup. So today, yes, the Sumatra Mandheling. I will be honest with you, and I'm going to be completely honest. Sumatra, I did not like a lot of Asian Pacific coffees until I came to work for Batdorf about 7 years ago. And we'll talk a little bit about maybe why that is as we look into the sourcing history for this coffee that we have on our coffee report. But with this coffee, it really brought me around. This coffee and its sourcing was really clean, and it brought forward the things which I'd always heard about could be part of Sumatran coffee. In this case, if you look at on all of our bags, you'll always see that we have tasting notes down near the bottom. And the tasting notes on this coffee are truffles, cedar, and clove. So I'd often heard about cedar being a quality of Sumatran coffes, and with some of the aged Sumatrans I tried, I could totally get it. But in this one, for sure, it's this big, really sweet woody element. Often we think of wood elements within a coffee's flavor or aroma as not necessarily positive, but in this case it's a spicy woody quality, which is really lovely. That spice is also augmented, of course, by cloves. And if you were to take a little bit of like a cedar bark, and then you kind of warm it up, you rub it under your nose, and then you were to smell cloves, you can really see how those two things complement each other and are actually a little bit similar in some ways. That resinous quality of the cedar, which is also present in the bough, besides just the bark. You can do the same thing with the bough. If you just warm it up a little bit with your hands and you put it under your nose, you'll smell that resin quality. And then I had to cheat a little bit. This is white truffle oil. Excuse me, I didn't have any fresh black truffles in my pantry. How dare I? But the quality of truffle, you can kind of see that there's like a family of qualities here, right? Another thing that's mentioned in our coffee report, tobacco. So sweet. Think of the sweetness of tobacco, like good pipe tobacco, or maybe a really nice cigar. Those things are what we're referencing when we're talking about these qualities. I am going to talk really quick about the Sumatra, where you find that on our website. We'll go over here and take a look at this. So again, right off the bat, when you go to our website and you see Sumatra Mandheling, earthy cedar notes with sweet tobacco flavors, right? So for sure, we've been able to call that out. The sweet tobacco, I would have had to have gone to the store and purchased tobacco. I chose not to do that for your benefit. I'm sorry, but I'm sure that you've all had an experience, like a positive experience, where maybe the smell of a tobacco pipe from coming from a pipe, or maybe just sitting in a bowl of tobacco, has been a positive one for you. I know I have. It had that sweetness of it, and again, I just keep coming back to this idea of resin, the qualities of a resin. That that's what occurs to me as I think about um, the qualities of this coffee. So I want to remind you, whenever you go to our website, for most of our coffees, you can come and read a little bit about it right here. But then if you pop right down here, you can go to the detailed coffee report. And you click on that, and it will pull up some work that Bob has done on this specific coffee. So the key about these coffees that is different, if you've looked at some of the photos that you've seen, maybe where we've done coffee talks before, if you've visited, if you've gone on any of the trips with us virtually, when we take photos and take video of going to origin, often in a lot of Latin America growth, there's more kind of a free flow of the tree, right? It grows as it would. Of course, they're constantly pruning them and upkeeping them, and they're keeping them kind of smaller, right? A coffee tree will grow like a tree, right? If you just let it have its will. A difference with that we experience in Indonesia and in Sumatra, you'll see the shape of the bush has been very carefully tended, right? Look at that rounded quality. You find that often in origin here. So that's something that's interesting about a difference here in how these are grown at the farm level. Another element that, and I said I was going to reference this a little bit, that I had experienced, that a lot of coffee in Sumatra is smallholder farms, very small farms. We spoke about this the other day when we were discussing Papua New Guinea. Very similar, many producers, people who own a very small amount of land relatively, and are producing coffee maybe as one of among many things. And so the coffee is harvested on that land, and then often there might be a nearby farmer, a friend, a neighbor who has a small hand-operated mill for pulping the coffee. And so a lot of that process with these coffees is done on site, right? It's actually done right where the coffee has been grown, and then it is also similarly dried. So we talk about a semi-wash process in which the coffee, rather than being completely depulped with a lot of water and having all the skin, the fruit, and the mucilage removed and then dried in parchment, in this case, the skin and the fruit is removed by these smaller, often hand-run or very simple pulping machines, and then dried right there. And you can see here we have, a coffee that's had the skin and the fruit removed, and it's simply placed out to dry with the mucilage still intact. And what occurs when we have the mucilage, that kind of that remnant of fruit that holds to the outside of the seed. Think of like when you eat a stone fruit, maybe a peach, and you bite into it, and you've eaten it, and you get down to the pit, and there might be some kind of like almost like hairs that are holding on to that pit. That's similar to what this mucilage is. It's this material that sticks to the outside, usually in fully washed preparations of coffee. When we talk about processing, that all gets kind of dissolved, often in a fermentation tank, like through the traditional method, or they have devices which replicate that process using water to remove the mucilage, so it's very clean very quickly. In this case, that mucilage has been left on and it's dried in the sun, and that can lead to all sorts of different amazing qualities It can also lead to some unamazing qualities, right? As you might imagine, this is, remember, a fruit that has been cleaned off, majority of the fruit removed, and is now drying in the sun. And if it's not tended very carefully, if it's not moved, doesn't have the right amount of airflow, we can get all sorts of funky flavors going on. That's probably some of the experiences I've had through some of the coffees that I've tried from this region of the world. Maybe it's because of that kind of decentralized aspect of its production, which remains at farm level. Now, in this case, in the processing and production notes, what we state here is that we work with folks who actually take what's called a triple picking process here, so that we are able to narrow out and remove any of those qualities, those what we call defects in processing, from these lots of coffee, right? So that means that these are going to be sorted by people who know what they're looking for at least 3 times. So any of the issues that might come up with that coffee are taken care of. I like to always do this. Just again, these deeper dives are really working for us all to get a deeper experience. Mandheling, says Eric. That's right, Mandheling. Let's look at where Mandheling is. We like to have an experience of really understanding where it is and what it takes for us to get this coffee, right? It doesn't just appear in Atlanta and Olympia. It has to travel. You all know that. Now, as you know, we get a lot of our coffee from this part of the world down here, Latin America, right? That's North America, Central America, South America. But this area that we've talked about this week, I spoke about Papua New Guinea, and now we're looking over here. I'm going to go down, and Lake Toba is kind of the big geographic anchor when we talk about the Mandheling area, right? And so we can look at this region here, and a large production zone here, or at least as far as processing and finalizing and preparing for shipping up there on the coast. But this is the area we're talking about. And again, you can see, this is a volcanic region, very high elevation. And as you know, if you've gone through any of the classes before, visited the roasteries, when we talk about the things that we need for our coffees, elevation is always associated with the kind of coffees that we're trying to source. Right? We want that elevation because it does several things for the coffee plant, and it produces a specific type of Arabica seed. That's the goal, right? Is you want that nice dense seed at the end of the day, because that's what we're going to clean this coffee, the coffee fruit off of, and get down to at the end. So Sumatra Mandheling, please do. We'll return back to the website in a second here, but I did want to begin looking at doing a quick brew of this coffee. Let's see if I can adjust this a little bit. Okay, so I have my scale here. I'm going to weigh it. Now I'm using the Clever Dripper. As you know, if you've been watching me, I'm a pretty big fan of the Clever Dripper. Like any pour-over method, I am going to begin by pre-wetting the filter, and that, of course, removes some of the paper qualities that might be in that filter that we don't want in our coffee, and it also allows us to saturate the filter with water. I'm going to put in my coffee here. And I don't think you can see the weight there, but it's, yeah, there you go, 29 grams, all right? So I want to remember that number, because what I'm going to do right when I start here, when I start my timer, is I'm going to remember that number, and I'm going to add the same volume of water, double to that, right? So I'm going to get just short of 60. Oop, a little bit over. My bad. It's okay though. As we talked before in this very space, it's not always necessary to to have the bloom in this one. All right. All right. About 30 seconds. I'm going to go ahead and top it up all the way to 430. And it's okay, you know, this is nice, this method, because allows us to, you know, the issue was is I was watching the scale on the on the screen as opposed to the actual scale, and there's a little bit of a lag. So yeah, a little bit imperfect there. We let this coffee sit. Now this is a full immersion method, and I'll shoot back to it really quick. Here you can see that there's, you know, a nice little crust on the top there from the coffee, you know, rising up. It's been degassed in that bloom. It's letting off a little bit of heat, and we do want to just do a bit of a stir here. Again, this coffee is in suspension. It's just floating in that water, and it's beginning the extraction. I don't have my lid for it. I wasn't able to grab that, but usually we have a lid. I have a lid that I like to use as well. So the coffee is going to sit for 4 minutes, right? And as it sits, we'll pop back over here to the website. I just wanted to talk a little bit about making an order with us. Now, I want you to remember that we have a discount code, and I'll put it up on the screen in a moment. When you make an order, you come over here, and we're going to ask you to choose the size of coffee, which in this case will be 12 ounce, and then we're also going to ask you about the grind. Now, this is default is whole bean, because I hope that, you know, you have a nice burr grinder at home. We can talk more about burr grinders maybe next week. And if not, though, don't worry. We can actually grind this for you, and we have different methods of making coffee at home here that you can choose from. And we add that to our cart. You go back up here to the top. You hit the cart, and here's the trick. Now, it's going to tell me right off the bat here that, you know, on Thursday, on today, you place this order, our orders get placed and then get roasted the following day. So we're going to roast on Fridays. So it means that this coffee is going to actually roast on Monday and then be sent out that same day. And this is the key thing. Down here in discount codes, I want us to go ahead and enter in the watch and learn 10 code. And that's the coupon code that you get to use to get discounts, and that's 10% off your entire order. So if you were to go in and say, oh, gosh, you know what, I am thinking about getting a nice Baratza grinder here. This is a great grinder, the Encore. If you add that to the cart as well, and then we go back up to our cart and take a look at that. Bing, doo, 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 doo. Here you can see that amount has been removed there as well. Great. So please make use of this code. Right there, it is. It's Watch and Learn 10. It is absolutely a great way for us to reward our friends who come here and visit us and talk about these coffees, and it's also a way for us to know if these are working, if they're helping you, because hopefully, you know, the whole point of talking about coffee for me as someone who loves coffee is I want to explain how amazing it is that when you drink this Sumatra, it's going to have these lovely herbaceous qualities, and you're going to be able to taste, you know, all the things that we talk about when we talk about, you know, our flavor wheel, right? You look at the flavor wheel up close, there's 100 different elements on there, and we're not doing it just to hear ourselves talk. I mean, we actually we get to experience those qualities in the coffees, and we want you to be able to experience them as well. Um, so, I mean, that's the reason we love to share coffee with you. I mean, it's our business, of course. You know that. We sell coffee, we source it, and we sell it. But the people who are doing this work really, really love coffee, right? And we love it for these very reasons, right? Because a lot of us had at one point we kind of call an aha moment, and that aha moment was for me was with a Yemeni coffee made by Tim McCormick at Zoka Coffee Roaster and Tea. It was a natural processed coffee, and I remember tasting that coffee, and there I can break my professional life into all the coffee I'd had up until 25, right? But you know, I used to hang out at Denny's when I was in high school. I'd make a few pots of coffee. I went to the early Starbucks stores. I had a fair amount of coffee before I was 25. There was all that coffee, and then there's been coffee after that moment. And it's because there were flavor qualities in that naturally processed Yemeni coffee that Tim had sourced, which became immediately apparent. I think that Sumatra can often be that coffee for folks because, you know, as we've talked through those elements that are in it, they are very unique as a flavor profile. And there really can be this moment where we taste a Sumatra and suddenly all those rich qualities, that big, heavy body that just sits there on the palate, and all those kind of luscious notes of sweet tobacco, truffle, think of the earthiness of truffle, a good earthiness, not dirt, but maybe more like a sweet loam quality. And then the spice of cloves and cedar in the aroma and the flavor, those become apparent. And it really can sometimes happen like that. You try a coffee and it's like you realize, what have I been drinking before now? Or what have I been paying attention to before now? Maybe they're the same question. Anyway, so I hope you enjoy this Sumatra. Please do try some. It was a pleasure to brew it for you today. It was a pleasure to talk about it with you today as well. I love our Asia Pacific coffees. Our Sumatra definitely brought me over. I'm still primarily a person who loves African coffees, but you know, the care that Bob brings and the roasting team brings to our Sumatra and our other Asian Pacific coffees really has made me an advocate for them. I hope you enjoy them as much as I do. If you have any questions, hop in here, let us know in this space or in others, on Facebook, and Twitter, wherever you can find us. Please reach out to us. We love talking with you. We love spending time with you. And we hope that these little daily live broadcasts are bringing some value to your life and helping you enjoy what we all love, which is a good cup of coffee at home. So take care, and we'll talk to you tomorrow and on the weekend as well. I believe Brendan will be with you on Saturday. He'll put a note here into the comments confirming that. And we'll see you soon. Take care.